society we live in, advising people on a matter or issue is something that can prove hard at times, especially when the recipient of this advice may not take kindly to being told about their actions. This may result in a reaction normally in the form of "don't judge me," a defense mechanism used by some people to deflect or justify their wrongdoing. Sadly, this attitude bears a presence in the Muslim community, with many confused as to how to advise their brother or sister, and some assuming superiority because they correct these actions. As always, this is a live discussion with the sisters on the panel, and we'd love to know what you think. Please do call to the studio to put your comments or questions to the panel. The number is on your screens now. Or you can tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM15. So, Sister Nusra, I'm going to come to you first. What does it actually mean, this "don't judge me"? What does this term mean?
I think the term "don't judge me" means when we refer to it within the context of a sentence, or when somebody's pointed out a fault that we've done, we tend to use it as a form of defense mechanism to say, well, I've done this action, so we shouldn't necessarily pick on my fault. It's kind of used as a means of evading wrongdoing, really, and avoiding being corrected on it. And instead, such individuals would advance that defense mechanism, and in some cases even point to the mistakes of the person that even pointed that out in the first place.
Yeah. And Sister Shaman, where does this term actually originate, and why do we find it so prevalent nowadays?
I think there is a tendency, amongst Muslims to have this monolithic understanding of Islam. But there are, the way we practice, we might have some differences, when it comes to, interpretation of the Quran, etc., that kind of stuff. But I mean, the "don't judge me" phrase has been used, to sort of minimize certain matters that have been divinely legislated. And we could say that it's sort of a post-modernist trend that where individuals can claim that everyone has the right to individual truths. So they might deem someone else's truth to be, sort of judgmental or ignorant. Do you not agree?
I think some people, they find it hard to swallow criticism, I think, and I think we were having a discussion about this earlier, Nusra.
I think it comes back to the foundations of "don't judge me" essentially lie within moral relativism, but more specifically normative moral relativism and meta-ethical moral relativism. So this idea that, yes, that people have different conceptions of truth, and because people have different conceptions of truth, they should all peacefully coexist, and we should all tolerate this. But in the context of Islam, Islam is not a relativist religion. There have been things that are divinely legislated, and it comes back as well to the society and structure of that we live in. We find that there's too much emphasis on people's feelings as opposed to the truth itself, and that's where it becomes a problem. We find that the consideration of someone's feelings as being more paramount than the truth, and that's not right. So within society, I mean, you've been in shops particularly where you may have a sign saying "don't shoplift," for example, or things to that effect. Why is it that we're even using the term shoplifting? Call it a spade, it's theft. People use words to try and cover it up, and that's not actually helping or ameliorating the situation, particularly when it comes to advice, because it acts as a form of emboldening people to continue in their wrongdoing. Now, when we look at it from a broad perspective and look at the foundations of it, particularly within liberalism, and compare it to the generations of old, like particularly my grandma's generation. My grandma Agnes was a woman that, even though she wasn't Muslim, perhaps represented aspects of Islam, perhaps more so than most Muslims themselves. She stood up for truth and actually said things as they really were. So if somebody is stealing, she wouldn't say, "Oh, that's shoplifting." No, she'd say, "Look, that's theft." And particularly within East African culture, particularly Ugandan culture, we say it the way it is. We find that under liberalism, but most specifically pluralism, Professor John Keats even said how choices and thoughts are restricted to liberal paradigm of thinking, and because of that, we find that this illusion actually of "don't judge me" is actually a farce.
Do you know what's funny is that you were saying that, and as you were saying that, I thought of the term, being brutally honest, and I thought, well, why does honesty have to be so? Why is it brutal? Why do people take it as it being a sort of brutality? If something is the truth and you're being told to kind of help you better yourself in a way, why is it deemed as something bad, in a sense? Why can't we tell you what's better?
It's because sometimes takabur, pride, actually can impede you from actually bettering yourself, because we live in this society where individualism permeates, and people think, how can this person have the audacity to correct me? It's my right this. But the thing is, rights come with responsibilities. So if somebody has corrected you, and they've corrected you in a way that hasn't dehumanized you, they've been actually very kind, you have to ask yourself, why is it that that's actually stopping me from accepting the truth?
Absolutely. It comes back to even the etiquette, isn't it? In Islam, we have an etiquette towards the way we speak to people. I think it comes to, we have like certain rules that we have, isn't it, when it comes to actually advising people, Shaman. What can you tell us about this?
Regarding advice, how Muslims should, advise one another, especially when we give like da'wah or nasiha. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, ad-deenun nasiha, which means that, it should be sincere. When we give advice, it should be sincere. How should we advise? I think we have to look at the method of the Prophet ﷺ.
Yes,
I think because he wasn't a harsh person, and everybody that he spoke to actually came away having a good feeling. And I think that's something that we tend to forget as Muslims. I'm going to have to cut you there. Alhamdulillah. So far, the discussion has been really interesting, but we will be going for a short break now. But before we go, here's a reminder of this week's competition.